Penguin Random House Audio presents Catherine the Great and Potemkin, The Imperial Love Affair, by Simon Sebag Montefiore. Read for you by Sophie Roberts.
Notes. Dates are given in the old-style Julian calendar used in Russia, which was 11 days earlier than the new-style Gregorian used in the West. In some cases, both dates are given. Money. 1 ruble contained 100 kopecks. Approximately 4 rubles is £1 sterling, is 24 French livres in the 1780s. At that time, an English gentleman could live on £300 a year, a Russian officer on 1,000 rubles. Distances and measurements. 1 verst equaled 0.663 miles or 1.06 kilometers. 1 desetina equaled 2.7 acres. Names and proper names. I have used the most recognizable form of most names, which means that absolute consistency is impossible in this area, so I apologize in advance to those offended by my decisions. The subject of this book is Potemkin, even though in Russian the pronunciation is closer to Potemkin. I have used the Russian form of names except in cases where the name is already well known in its English form. For example, the Tsarevich Pavel Petrovich is usually called Grand Duke Paul. Semyon Romanovich Vorontsov is Simon Vorontsov. The Empress is Catherine, not Ekaterina. I usually spell Peter and other first names in the English form instead of Pyotr, and so on. I have used the Russian feminized form of names such as Dashkova instead of Dashkov. In Polish names, such as Branicki, I have left the name in its more Polonized form, pronounced Branicki. Thus, in the feminine, I have used the Russian for Skavronskaya, but the Polish for Branicka. Once someone is known by a suffix or title, I try to use it, so that A.G. Arlov is Arlov Chesmensky once he had received this surname. Prologue. Death on the Steppes. Prince of Princes. Jeremy Bentham on Prince Potemkin. Whose bed? The earth. Whose roof? The azure, whose halls the wilderness round. Are you not fame and pleasure's offspring, O splendid Prince of Crimea? Have you not from the heights of honours been suddenly midst empty steppes downed? Gavrili Derzhavin, The Waterfall. Shortly before noon on the 5th of October 1791, the slow cavalcade of carriages, attended by liveried footmen and a squadron of Cossacks in the uniform of the Black Sea host, stopped halfway down a dirt track on a desolate hillside in the midst of the Bessarabian steppe. It was a strange place for the procession of a great man to rest. There was no tavern in sight, not even a peasant's hovel. The big, sleeping carriage, pulled by 8 horses, halted first. The others, there were probably 4 in all, slowed down and stopped alongside the first on the grass as the footman and cavalry escort ran to see what was happening. The passengers threw open their carriage doors. When they heard the despair in their master's voice, they hurried towards his carriage. "That's enough," said Prince Potemkin. "That's enough. There is no point in going on now." Inside the sleeping carriage, there were 3 harassed doctors and a slim countess with high cheekbones and auburn hair, all crowded round the prince. He was sweating and groaning. The doctors summoned the Cossacks to move their massive patient. "Take me out of the carriage," Potemkin ordered. Everyone jumped when he commanded, and he had commanded virtually everything in Russia for a long time. Cossacks and generals gathered round the open door and slowly, gently, began to bear out the stricken giant. The Countess accompanied him out of the carriage, holding his hand, dabbing his hot brow as tears streamed down her face, with its small retroussé nose and full mouth. A couple of Moldavian peasants who tended cattle on the nearby steppe ambled over to watch. His bare feet came first, then his legs and his half-open dressing gown, though this vision in itself was not unusual. Potemkin notoriously greeted empresses and ambassadors in bare feet and open dressing gowns, but now it was different. He still had the leonine Slavic handsomeness, the thick head of hair once regarded as the finest in the empire, and the sensual Grecian profile that had won him the nickname Alcibiades as a young man. However, his hair was now flecked with grey and hung over his feverish forehead. He was still gigantic in stature and breadth. Everything about him was exaggerated, colossal and original, but his life of reckless indulgence and relentless ambition had bloated his body and aged his face. Like a cyclops, he had only one eye. The other was blind and damaged, giving him the appearance of a pirate. His chest was broad and hairy, always a force of nature. He now resembled nothing so much as a magnificent animal, reduced to this twitching, shivering pile of flesh. The apparition on this wild steppe was His Most Serene Highness, Prince of the Holy Roman Empire, Grigory Alexandrovich Potemkin, probably husband of the Empress of Russia, Catherine the Great, and certainly the love of her life, the best friend of the woman, the co-ruler of her empire, and the partner in her dreams. He was Prince of Taurida, Field Marshal, Commander-in-Chief of the Russian Army, Grand Hetman of the Black Sea and Ekaterinoslav Cossacks, Grand Admiral of the Black Sea and Caspian fleets, President of the College of War, Viceroy of the South, and possibly the next King of Poland, or of some other principality of his own making. The Prince, or Serenissimus, as he was known across the Russian Empire, had ruled with Catherine II for nearly 2 decades. They had known each other for 30 years and had shared each other's lives for almost 20. Beyond that, the prince defied and still defies all categorization. Catherine noticed him as a witty young man and summoned him to be her lover at a time of crisis. When their affair ended, he remained her friend, partner and minister and became her co-Tsar. She always feared, respected and loved him, but their relationship was stormy. She called him her Colossus and her tiger, her idol, hero, the greatest eccentric. This was the genius who hugely increased her empire, created Russia's Black Sea Fleet, conquered the Crimea, won the Second Turkish War, and founded famed cities such as Sebastopol and Odessa. Russia had not possessed an imperial statesman of such success in both dreams and deeds since Peter the Great. Serenissimus made his own policies, sometimes inspired, sometimes quixotic, and constructed his own world. While his power depended on his partnership with Catherine, he thought and behaved like one of the sovereign powers of Europe. Potemkin dazzled its cabinets and courts with his titanic achievements, erudite knowledge and exquisite taste, while simultaneously scandalizing them with his arrogance and debauchery, indolence and luxury. While hating him for his power and inconsistency, even his enemies acclaimed his intelligence and creativity. Now this barefoot prince half staggered and was half carried by his Cossacks across the grass. This was a remote and spectacular spot, not even on the main road between Iași in today's Romania and Chișinău in today's Republic of Moldova. In those days, this was the territory of the Ottoman Sultan, conquered by Potemkin. Even today it is hard to find, but in 200 years it has hardly changed. The spot where they laid Potemkin was a little plateau beside a steep stone lane, whence one could see far in every direction. The countryside to the right was a rolling green valley, rising in a multitude of green, bushy mounds into the distance, covered in the now almost vanished high grass of the steppes. To the left, forested hills fell away into the mist.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?